All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here recording on the Tuesday evening for our November 22nd episode, number 105, week 12 of the NFL season. And this is one of my favorite weeks of the NFL season. It is U.S. Thanksgiving. Doing a little bit different this year. They got their 3 Thanksgiving Day games, which is like standard, and then they also have a Black Friday game on the Friday too, which is kind of cool. So this is gonna be a good week of football. So we got Thursday, 3 games Thursday, Black Friday, then we have college on Saturday, then obviously a full slate of football on Sunday, and then the Monday nighter. So this is like 5 full good days of football. So if you're a football fan, a lot to be happy about this upcoming week. But looking at the schedule, obviously the Lions is a big rivalry one. Kickoff Thursday. This is one of my favorite days of the year for football for sure. Lots of times I'd usually take a personal day or something like that, watch some football. I'm not doing that this year, so I'm going to be actively checking the scores on my phone on Thursday afternoon. But yeah, I'm excited for this week. But regardless, we'll get into a little bit here. We'll check in. It's just me and Zach this week here. Basketball season kickstarted here, along with mixed in with interviews. So Armin is not here for this episode, so it's just me and Zach. So Zach, first week here, coming off, I guess coming off the break we had this last little bit, coming off no football here, time to relax, time to kind of catch up on some stuff. What's been keeping you busy?
Not too much has been keeping me busy, but we kind of mentioned earlier that basketball season's kicking off, and while I'm not coaching basketball this year, it's I love walking down the hallways after school and hearing the basketballs in the gym. It definitely makes me think about, should I commit to another 3-4 month season? I don't know if that's a great idea,
Yeah,
but
makes the school year
definitely
go
makes
by
me
fast.
consider it.
It makes the school year go by faster, but I don't know if the family life will be too happy about that one.
Yeah, no kidding.
I got found out actually today I'm gonna be coaching basketball because like with our school it's big, it's busy, it's hard to commit to coaching when you got so much going on. But I get to coach some grade 8 basketball this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. So we don't start until next week. We got kind of an open gym tryouts and sign up and all that fun stuff, and then we got our first game. I think it's the following week, but yeah, I'm excited for that. It's something new, something to do, and give back to the school community a little bit. We'll get things going here, I guess. 22 fresh quick question of the week. Kind of keeping with the theme, we always try and tie it to the week or something along those lines. This one we got US Thanksgiving, which is already mentioned. One of the NFL traditions that has happened over the last handful of years. I think it's a John Madden connection, is it not? It's right, the Turducken.
I think so, yeah. Or at least he kind of uh made it one, yeah.
Yeah, so what happens if you're not familiar with it on the Thanksgiving? Usually it's like the player of the game or it's like the top producers or the captains or what have you of the winning team. They go and they interview and then they take the turkey legs and bite the turkey legs. Kirk Cousins had a pretty iconic one. Richard Sherman had another good one. Lots of players talk about like that's something they look forward to if you're playing in those Thursday games, is possibly getting a bite of the turducken. So this one is, who is a player that you think could be taking a big bite out of the turkey leg this Thursday? So in context, we have 6 teams playing. So in this question, I guess it's a loaded question. We're picking a player from a team we think is going to win and a player that we think is going to have a big week. So in the context, we have Green Bay at Detroit, we have Washington at Dallas, and then in the evening game, we have San Francisco at Seattle. So we'll get you to go first, Zach, because this player is on fire and I can't see him cooling down anytime soon.
Yeah, so I went with the second game of the slate, the Washington at Dallas game, and I went with Ceedee Lamb. And it's honestly a toss up between Dak and Ceedee for me. But I went with Ceedee, like I said, and that has a lot to do with the fact that right now Washington is the 30th ranked passing defense in terms of yards allowed per game. And I don't think that's going to get any better against a pretty potent passing offense in Dallas. So wouldn't be shocked if CD won it, but I also wouldn't be shocked if Dak was the winner there.
Yeah, safe money is on Ceedee, but obviously Dak throwing the ball to Ceedee. It very well could be both of those guys. I think was it 3 players usually go to the plate. So I mean, it very well could be both of them. Who knows? So, um, mine, I gotta go homer pick here because this is gonna feel so good. They played week 4 and Detroit beat the wheels off them, which was just like one of the happiest days of my life. I've been a Lions fan for too long and too many Roger beatdowns and tough losses against the Packers. So this one felt good when they beat the wheels off them there. And Jahmyr Gibbs was, it took him a little bit to get going here. We're starting to see him produce this last couple weeks. I really wanted to go with one of the running backs, and actually Zach and I talked about a little bit, but Montgomery rinsed them. 32 carries for 121 yards and 3 tutties. Jahmyr Gibbs had a pretty decent game too. 8 carries, 40 yards. And then he also got some work in the air, 4 receptions, 11 yards. So, I mean, not great, but now compared to what Gibbs is doing now, it's very, very good. And then Amon-Ra went 5 for 56 and 1, which is like not a super week. So, I mean, easy money would say to go against the running backs here because the Packers aren't really good against the running game. Like actually, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, and then they're actually pretty good against the receivers. But I'm going. So when I say Amon-Ra St. Brown, most people think, oh yeah, that's an easy one. Amon-Ra's been unreal. I think he's got a touchdown in the last like 5 or 6 weeks. He's been, superstar. So I think most people think, oh, that's an easy lock, Amon-Ra. But I think I'm going against the grain a little bit here because the easy money would be on the running game that's going to ground and pound and kind of is the identity of the Lions, especially against a team struggling against the run. But I think this is one where Jared Goff and the offense is going to get right. If you watch that game against Chicago, the offense, they got out of rhythm really quick, and Goff had 3 interceptions, probably could have had like 5. He had 2 that should have been picked. 2 of the interceptions were tipped. So, I mean, they kind of washed out in the end, but the offense just didn't look good until about the last 6 minutes of the football game. So looking at a get right game, I think we're gonna get back into the motion of ground and pound, get that play action, get Laporta on the under and Amon-Ra over top, and I think we're gonna try and do some little some damage against Green Bay, especially at home. Thanksgiving, there's a lot to play for, especially they're just keep chasing Philadelphia and a chance at that bye week at this point. So I'm going to Amon-Ra. He's one of my boys. I'm actively pursuing him right now in dynasty leagues, trying to get him on my winning roster. So might as well put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going with Amon-Ra. But I do think, Zach, like you said, we were talking off the air there, this one could be a very easy Jahmyr Gibbs, like 100 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown, then like 45 in the air and another touchdown, if not more. Like this could be very much a Jahmyr Gibbs game. We might as well get this one going because there's a lot of big names and insiders and headliners that I think we need to talk about. Usually we try and fly through this pretty quickly, but we got lots to talk about. But regardless, before we get there, this is kind of fun. I've had lots of questions sent to us on the podcast before, like lots and lots of questions. It's actually fun. It's one of my normal go-tos on, a Thursday, Sunday, Monday when I'm getting those start-sit questions or trade questions. Our social media is actually quite active with people asking us questions. But this one, one of our I'd say our regulars. I won't say his name on the pod just because if his teammates are listening or his league mates are listening, don't want to give away his trade pursuit here. So unnamed patron of the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast messaged me and said, question for you. And I'm going to lay out the whole outline. It says, picture this. You're 9-2, currently first seed, clinched playoffs already, likely first round bye. Good RB and good wide receiver depth. Andrews was your tight end. How much are you willing to overpay for Kelce? So already locked playoff team, likely getting the bye. If that's the case, you just got to win 2 more games. You got to win the semifinals and win the finals. So would you go all in for Kelce? And if so, how much would you overpay? Looking at his roster here, he's got Dak, McCaffrey, Rashad White, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mike Evans, Pat Freiermuth, Ceedee Lamb, Christian Kirk, James Conner, Hubbard, Murray, Rashee Rice, and obviously Mark Andrews. But he also said Kelce owner really the only one open for business, because I mentioned that you could go all in for Kelce, or you could maybe try and pursue somebody like Hawkinson, Laporta, or Taysom Hill on the cheaper side and keep your depth. But he said the Laporta owner said he'd be part with him, but he's the only guy in second, so he really doesn't want to give up that player if he's pursuing a playoff spot. So if this is the question, he offered this trade, or this was kind of something that's up in the air right now. He's offering James Conner, Kyler Murray, and Mike Evans for T. Higgins and Travis Kelce. So like that's a real offer. Because T. Higgins at this point, real question mark coming off the injury. We'll talk about the Joe Burrow injury here in a little bit. But Travis Kelce, obviously the focal point of that side. But then Mike Evans is having a really, really good season. I think he's wide receiver 7 on the season or something like that currently. Kyler Murray coming off the injury, 2 pretty good weeks back-to-back. A really good first week. This past week, a few more speed bumps, but still really good so far. And then James Conner. I mean, you know what you're getting in James Conner. He's going to be Mr. Consistency. I don't know if the ceiling's that high anymore, but the floor is definitely nice for James Conner. So a pretty legitimate offer here. So definitely worth something discussing on the pod here. So I'm curious on your initial reactions on what you do here, Zach. First of all, I guess we could talk about the offer. Second of all, would you be rolling the dice with a waiver wire guy instead of giving up your depth at that point?
I'll start with the waiver wire question there. Unless this is like a really, really shallow league, which I don't think it is, likely your best pull off of waivers would likely be, I want to say like Isaiah Likely,
That's first thing
like
that came to
Hunter
mind.
Henry, like something like that. And that's probably not what he's looking for, especially if he is thinking of going all in kind of and trying to win it all. I missed if you gave me who his quarterbacks were.
Oh, sorry. His
I
quarterback.
suspect he has somebody not named Kyler Murray, considering he's 9-2.
He has Dak Prescott.
Okay, so he's had Murray either on his bench, on his IR, or he picked him up in the past 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Yep.
So like really Murray's kind of a wash because the buys are done. And as far as I don't know off the top of my head here, Dax, when was his buy? Or
week 8, I think it was.
Yeah, so don't have to worry about the buy. Sure, you're probably thinking Murray's great injury insurance, but also a pretty good trade piece. Mind you, if it's a super flex, that's another question, but
no, it's not.
We'll say it's not. So then it's really going to be for me Connors and Evans versus Higgins and Kelce. I think that's a pretty good deal. Like, yeah, you're giving up a top 12 player there in Mike Evans at his position, but you probably have absolutely no depth at Kelce or at tight end, and Kelce's going to solve that for you, obviously. And probably having Andrews was a key cog in that starting lineup, where that was the difference some weeks, I'm sure.
Well, so putting this in the context, the starting lineup, obviously you'd have to remove Mike Evans. T. Higgins would most likely have to go into that starting lineup coming off the injury, like he's still not healthy. Mm-hmm. So he would most likely have to go in that lineup unless you're putting Deonta Foreman, Chuba Hubbard, or Rashee Rice. That is his bench. So he would lose Mike Evans. Higgins would have to go in that lineup, or unless one of those bench guys. So he would have a pretty thin bench at that point. I mean, you might be able to pick somebody off the waiver wire, depending on, I'm not like, obviously we're speaking hypothetically here. I don't have the whole roster. I don't have the whole league in front of me here, but it would put him at risk of, if another injury happened, his depth would be terrible. Or do you keep the depth and try and roll the dice with like an Isaiah Likely or like a Cade Otton or something along those lines? But I think it comes down to the context is really good in this situation. You have to win 2 games. It's not like he has to go on a 4-game tear here, make playoffs kind of thing. So I personally have a hard time with this one. I think, man, I think it's fair. I think it's fair regardless. You pull the pin one way, you add Kelce. It's another like key part. I think I lean more to the Kelce side. I'm with you, Zach. And the reason for that is like you said, Mike Evans is really good. He's a top 12 piece, but you can grab somebody off the waiver wire to possibly be a top 12. T. Higgins with a backup quarterback back could possibly be a top 18 wide receiver in a week. where like there's Travis Kelce here, and then there's like a tier break. So like you could be going against a guy in the semifinals who has, I don't know, like a Ferguson or something like that, or like I don't know, those middling tight ends that get 6 points and Kelce gets you 20. Well, that's a huge positional advantage. So in the playoffs, I mean, if he loses a McCaffrey, if he loses a Ceedee Lamb, like you're probably not winning the championship anyways. So what's depth at this point, I guess. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is that kind of do you seem to agree with that?
Yeah, I like personal philosophy. I tend to value depth, I think, more so than just having like a few studs. Um, but I wouldn't be opposed to making that trade. However, if the concern about depth is there and giving up a lot to go get Kelce, and he's already said like the guy that has Hawkinson isn't budging, Laporta isn't budging. Like there are other guys too that I feel that I'd feel good about. Like go try to get Trey McBride on the cheap.
Yeah.
Evan Ingram, while not as good as last year, he's been not bad and a heck of a lot better than whoever you're gonna take off waivers. Like Dalton Kincaid wouldn't be the worst thing. He's kind of heating up here. So
I
I
really
think
like the
there's
Taysom Hill one. That's a guy that I think you could legitimately get. Like if he offered James Conner for Taysom Hill, I think that gets done.
yeah, and he's tight end number 8.5 point scoring,
Yeah, he
which
could get you 30 points. He could outscore Travis Kelce. Especially came off the bye week too, so people kind of forget. Oh, he's been, pretty good, especially coming off the
yeah,
bye
but
week.
Rick, talk about a roller coaster here. Looking at his weekly output or his weekly finishes, week 1 tight end 49, week 2 13, week 3 30, week 4 34, week 6 40. Week 6 number 9, 7 was 5th overall, 8 was 1st overall, week 9 was 4th overall, and week 10 was 23. So you're really either
Boomer bust, which
yeah,
is
you're really
playoffs,
hitting
baby.
it out of the park, or you're down there with the likes of you and I.
Hey, I respect you, Zach. I think you can do better than tight end 40. But really, like it's playoffs, boomer bust, and that's a guy you can get cheap, especially with having Derek Carr injured. There might be more of a utilization coming off the bye
Sure.
week, like
Yeah.
all stuff. That was one I thought it's risky, super risky, but so is giving up your entire depth going into a playoff run. So, but that was a question that came up, and I was like, man, I'm gonna bring this one up because I don't know if there's like a clear cut answer. Is it a fair trade? 100%. But it's what do you value going into the playoffs? I guess. Do you value that top end talent that might be able to win you the league, or do you value the depth with still, well, between now and the championship week, we still got 6 weeks of football left. So it's a lot can happen in 6 weeks. So that's one of me. I'll throw that one out a poll on our social medias and get get some feedback on that one too. But anyhow, we got lots of lots and lots to talk about here in Insider Headlines. We hinted at Joe Burrow. We just talked about it in the T Higgins offer. Joe Burrow torn tendon in his wrist/hand. Season over. We saw if you're watching Thursday Nighter. I guess he was wearing a brace. If you saw the clip of it before, I don't know if that was related to the same injury or if it was like a tweak. And then when him landing on it, on that sack or whatever that play there, it was made it worse or aggravated. What the situation was. But long story short, rambling on here, Joe Burrow season's over. And if you are a Ja'Marr Chase owner, if you are a, even like Tyler Boyd, who we'll talk about later on, if you're an owner of these auxiliary pieces, you are in trouble. The backup quarterback whose names escape me here, I wish I would have wrote it down. He didn't look terrible in the,
Is it Jake
Browning or something like that.
Browning? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it right there.
he didn't look terrible. The only problem is you see it lots when a backup quarterback goes in, they seemingly target the second string options because that's who they practice with all week, all season in practice. And that's what happened. He went in that game and was it Tyler Irving or Travis Irving or what? I don't even know what his first name is, but I think it's Irving is his last name or Irving. He had like 7 targets or 8 targets and 7 receptions, something like that. I mean, he was getting peppered. So I mean, a week of practice as the starter, maybe you see a little more involvement from some of these studs here with some preparation, but that's what you see lots of. They have these connections with the second string options. So when it comes to secondary or backup quarterbacks, I think there's a lot worse in the league. Like the Browning versus Zach Wilson, that's an easy decision there. I know who I'd be picking in that situation, but obviously, if you are a Bengals owner of any sort in fantasy, you got to be the panic button going off a little bit here. So, like, put in perspective, Zach, like, I know most leagues the trade deadline's passed on here, but like, what could you be getting for Jahmyr Chase at this point? Like, I mean, obviously he's a top end talent, but we saw what the top end talent did with a backup quarterback, or even with a banged up Joe Burrow, and it wasn't very good those first couple weeks. So, like, Jahmyr Chase or Puka Nacua rest of the season.
Oof. I might go Puka.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Jahmyr Chase, Tyler Lockett, and rest of the season.
Oh dear. Probably. Oof. I would go Chase on that one.
So that's what I was gonna say. Jahmyr Chase or Marquise Hollywood Brown. So I think that's obviously on the other side. Like that's the decisions we're making here at this point with Jahmyr Chase, who was like what 103, 104 in most leagues.
Yeah, he
like
would have been the first or second receiver off the board.
Yeah, this is tough sledding. It hasn't been a a cookie cutter season here for Jahmyr Chase and fantasy owners, that's for sure. But we talked about Mark Andrews in that trade offer as well too. Mark Andrews ankle injury, season ender. It sounds like, I know they put reports out saying that, if it goes well, maybe it's not. Like, we're talking fantasy season. The fantasy season, it's over. They're saying he might come back for playoffs or the tail end of the season. But Mark Andrews now, fantasy season is over, which makes Isaiah likely become a very hot commodity. Imagine he'll go for a copious amount of fab in most leagues. But a couple other ones here. Geno Smith had an elbow injury, left for a bit, came back towards the end. They're saying right now he could play in the Thursday nighter. I think he's trending towards probably unlikely, which is not great for Seattle, especially being in a race right now for the division title, and they're playing the team that they're kind of going back and forth with here, which is San Francisco. And they're also going to be without Kenneth Walker, who had an oblique injury. They said he's not an IR candidate, but time will tell. I was listening to another podcast, and they said the oblique injury is typically a 1 to 2 week injury, but the fact that they're throwing out the IR possibility, and when the quote says time will tell, that's not a great thing when you're talking about your running back and how long he possibly out. That time will tell whether he hits the IR or not. It's not super promising. So for sure, I'd expect Kenneth Walker to be out a couple weeks. And sorry, Zach, for that one. That one was not how I thought that was going to go. I thought, pretty fair trade across the board there, but at least you got to keep him next year for a 6th rounder.
True. Yeah. And that team, it's dead on arrival. So,
hey, Fields looked good though. So that's all I thought. I was like, hey, Fields is back. Zach's team's going to look okay here. And Fields had a pretty good game. It's like, all right, well, Zach's back in it. And then Kenneth Walker goes down.
That's a different league, my guy.
Yeah. Oh,
we're in too many leagues together.
Oh, what are we in, like 4 or 5? Okay, I'm just getting them all mixed and matched here together. Oh yeah, because Fields is the one you have the super flex, and then that was a different league, totally out to lunch. Okay, so sidebar here. This is totally out talking about too many leagues. I was making a trade offer this guy in my one dynasty league. It's the big money dynasty league, and actually, me and him took over this league as like dual commissioners. So me and him kind of go back and forth, making sure stuff is run smooth. And I put an offer on. He says, "Okay, well, I gotta take a look here." So he's already out of the race. And he says, "Well, it's kind of got this league goes on the back burner because I'm in too many leagues." And I said, "Well, how many leagues are you in?" He said, "I'm in 40 leagues." Ooh. I said, 40 league? I couldn't believe I couldn't. So he was like, "Yeah, like when I'm in that many leagues, the ones that I'm out of it just kind of hits the back burner." And I'm thinking like 40 leagues. That's 40 waiver wires. That's 40 different start sits actively on a Sunday and IR and fall. Like, he says, yeah, a couple of buddies I'm in have 90 leagues. It's like how do you have 90 leagues?
Yeah.
First of all, you're not married. There's no way you're married. That's just not possible. Like 90 leagues. Are you kidding? So yeah, that's another sidebar I had there, but yeah, wild stuff. Cooper Kupp, this one sucks. Talk about a roller coaster, talking about Jahmyr Chase roller coaster. Cooper Kupp roller coaster too. Sprained ankle, the same ankle that he had a surgery on last year. He's considered day-to-day at this point. I would expect him to miss this week, but hopefully you get him back for the next week. But like it's it's been a roller coaster, but no bigger roller coaster than the Zach Wilson experience. We talked about that a little bit too. Officially benched now. He is not the QB2 on the roster. He is now the QB3. So he is like Zach Wilson, done. RIP. His career's over, done. Joe Flacco signed to Cleveland practice squad. Another one. Aaron Jones knee injury. Speaking of that sucks. Another guy that could be on waiver wires too. But maybe worth taking a peek there is the counterpart for Aaron Jones. AJ Dillon might be on waiver wires, might be a sneaky little pickup rest of the season, because there's a possibility Aaron Jones could land himself on the IR again, which would seemingly end his fantasy season. Devon St too, now that re-aggravated his knee. This one, Zach, I'm very curious on your opinion, because Devon St is lightning in a bottle. Like, we've seen it so far this season. He touches the ball, very limited touches, but if he touches it, he could house it at any moment. Was on the IR for an extended period of time. Now he's back, gets a touchdown, re-aggravates the same knee injury. Like, what do you do? The trade deadline's passed, so you got to hold him. Like, do you think he's going to be available come down the playoff stretches, even if he comes back in the playoff stretch? Or are you going to put him in your roster? Like, can you trust him at this point with back-to-back knee injuries and injured in the preseason? Like, if you were an owner of A-Chain, are you like, what would your thoughts be right now, and would you be confident with him moving forward the rest of the year?
Yeah, this one's a tricky one. I think for me, it would depend on the size of your bench. Like, you and I are in a few leagues where our bench is 4 guys. In a league like that, I don't think I would have the confidence to roster him. I guess it also kind of depends on your roster makeup, but I don't think I'd have the confidence to roster him, because, like you said, even when he does come back, and there's still that discussion of, could it be a Raheem Mostert day? Could it be a Salvon Ahmed day, for heaven's sakes? Or could it be a Devon St day? Like, who, you don't really know. And then even if it is an St day, do you have confidence in the playoffs that he won't get hurt, re-aggravate that injury? I don't know if I'd have that confidence, but in other leagues we're in, that bench is like 6, 7, 8 guys deep. So in a league like that, I would have a lot more confidence to roster him, knowing that, yes, he might not ever start for you, but there is a chance he might go on like a 2-3 week role there as the premier back, or as the lead back in that offense. And then if that's the case, then you'd have more confidence in starting him. But for me, I would need a few weeks of like evidence before even considering starting him.
Okay, well, that might answer this question then, because my next question was, put you in a scenario. It's week 15, you're in the quarterfinal matchups, and Devon St is coming off the injury and is going to be active week 15 quarterfinal matchup.
Yeah,
Like,
I would have to. It would be, I don't think I'd be starting him over like a, definitely
Devin Singletary right now.
Well, right now with oh shoot.
Yeah,
names like on the top of my tongue there.
Oh man.
With the lead back there.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
If that other guy's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably start him over Singletary, but if he's not there and Singletary's the lead back, probably not, because you know what you're going to get out of Singletary.
This is driving me nuts. I'm trying to find out what Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, so Pierce,
that was driving me bonkers.
Yeah, tough one for us there.
Yeah, we need an Armin for that one. Big Pierce fan.
If Pierce is there, then yeah, probably start him over Singletary. But without Pierce, then I think we've seen now what Singletary can do when it's his backfield, and he looked not bad.
Yeah, this has been a tough year for injuries. Like, it just seems like these big, and if it's not like the big names getting hurt, like how many quarterbacks have gone down this year, which is obviously affecting all these auxiliary pieces for these offenses. Like, it's been a roller coaster, and we're not even in playoffs yet. Like, this has been wild. But sorry, we ate up a lot of time here on this first little bit of the pod here, but we'll get into studs and duds, and then we'll get into our starts and sits, and that'll be that. So start of the week, I'll fire up first one. This has been nice because it's not a guy that you've been trusting lots this season, and he had a huge week finally. And I think a lot of it has been the fact that because Jacksonville's run game has been so good, that's why his production hasn't been, because obviously the quarterback's not going to get the points. But Trevor Lawrence, he was one of my guys going into the season. Super pumped to have him on the roster. It hasn't been great, but 32.18 fantasy points this week, the number one producer of fantasy points in week number 11, sorry. He was 24 for 32 through the air for 262 and 2. He also had 5 rushing attempts for 17 and another 2 rushing touchdowns. So 4 touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence, a massive week, obviously number one fantasy producer on the week. Super nice to see him bounce back. This week against Houston is going to be a real interesting one. Juicy matchup. Both offenses get the ball moving again. But is this going to be another like huge ground and pound week for Jacksonville, or is Trevor Lawrence just going to keep rolling? He caught big time steam about this time last year, and then like just did not take the foot off the throttle. And it was Trevor Lawrence mania all the way into playoffs. The big comeback against the Chargers, just about upsetting the Chiefs in the divisional match. So like it was go time this last year for Trevor Lawrence. So give me interesting to see if that happens again for the rest of the season. But very happy that finally he had a big week. So Trevor Lawrence will be my stud. Zach, this one, I got to give you kudos, because not only is he your stud of the week, you gave fantasy managers the heads up about this guy in the offseason, saying, hey, he's not just a handcuff. I'd be drafting this guy everywhere, and he very well likely could be the RB1 of this team for the season. So I'll give you some preamp kudos here for this one. Pump those tires before you give your stud of the week.
Yeah, I'm really happy that I get a chance to talk about Jaylen Warren here. Jaylen Warren has shown that he has the potential to be a very dynamic back in this offense, a lot more dynamic than the running back that they have been trotting out there, Najee Harris. Jaylen Warren, though, 2 weeks 1 through 9, didn't have a top 20 finish in any of the weeks. Each week there, he had, 8 to 12 touches on offense, but starting in week 9, he was getting around 15 touches there, and that really coincided with him producing quite well. In week 9, he finished as the running back 14 on the week. Week 10, running back 7, and this week 11, finished as running back 2. This week he had 129 rushing yards, 1 touchdown on the ground, 3 receptions, and 16 yards through the air, with a staggering 14.3 yards per rushing attempt. That is certainly not something that's going to continue, but it is a sign of his efficiency, only having 9 rushing attempts. So he did bust off a big one, but I do think if he gets back down to, 7, 8 yards per attempt, that's probably a little bit more realistic for the type of player that he is. So it is a bit of a roller coaster that you do need to be aware of when you are playing Jaylen Warren. He could have a big week like he has, or it could become a Najee Harris week where they just run the ball into the A gap consistently and just kind of stagnate their offense. But when they do run Warren, he does do quite well for himself.
Yeah, new OC be going to be interesting. See you later, Matt Canada. So
yeah, no
it'll be an interesting one. Going into this one, my dud. This is my dud on so many levels. In one of the leagues Zach and I are in commissions, I single-handedly lost my matchup because of the Jets. It was down to this. There was nobody left to play in our matchups. He had the Bills defense. That was all he had. That was literally it. And the Jets suck. There's no answer, but they suck. They suck real bad. So I got to put my dad is Garrett Wilson, because he literally got negative points, which he was a 3rd round draft pick for most, maybe a 2nd round draft pick. Obviously the expectation is a little bit different now because losing Aaron Rodgers and whatnot, but he had 8 targets, 2 receptions, 9 yards, and a lost fumble. So negative fantasy points for Garrett Wilson, which is absolutely absurd. But looking at the team stats, this is why I lost. That last interception when Tim Boyle went in single-handedly lost me. But 2 interceptions thrown, 2 lost fumbles, and 6 allowed sacks against the Bills. It was a get-right game. The Bills looked good. They got it done. But the Jets suck, and so did Garrett Wilson. So that's just where I'll leave it at that. Okay, so Zach, Monday Nighter, a lot of people were relying on some big names. Unfortunately, one of them made your list here. So let's hear your dud of the week.
Yeah, you bet. We were at a local establishment with a few friends from work watching the game yesterday, and a lot of the fellow customers there were doing some gambling, some betting, and AJ Brown was a whipping boy for the table over beside us. Think a lot of the guys there at that table had a few props on him, and he came through. Absolutely did not come through. Brown had 1.3 fantasy points, 1 reception on 4 targets for 8 yards. I think Brown's biggest play of the game was when he almost ripped the ball out of the corner's hand on
That
the
was a
interception.
fumble. Like that was a fumble.
He was down. Their shins touched, shin to shin contact.
Oh man, I think that's a fumble.
Oh yeah, the one fellow there at the table beside us was standing, screaming at the television at the
Because
restaurant.
that makes a difference, just so everybody is aware at home. Like that makes a difference. Just so you're aware.
I'm surprised he could stand, to be honest, this guy.
Tough Monday night, probably a tougher Tuesday morning.
One would imagine.
Oh man. Okay, so I guess all we got left here is our starts of the week, I guess. But before that, there is a big Black Friday sale coming up for 22 Fresh. I know we got the 306 FFB 15 promo code, but I'd be checking out their online stores here for the big Black Friday sales. Get yourself into some of that 22 Fresh gear. Like I said, we got stuff for all of our big events coming up this fantasy season, including a couple giveaways we've had already this season as well. So check out 22 Fresh. All that winter gear, fall gear, it's all in there. Black Friday sales, I'm looking forward to what's going to end up there. So make sure you get in there before everything's gone, because quantities will not last during those Black Friday sales. So 22 Fresh, get on the website, use promo code 306 FFB15. Weekly preview for week number 12. We have 4 teams coming off the bye week. That's the Atlanta Falcons, the Indianapolis Colts, the New England Patriots, and the New Orleans Saints. Last week, Zach, we didn't have you on the pod, but we kind of made a little bit of light humor of the Patriot situation. But I want your quick, honest opinion. Do we see Mac Jones at all for the remainder of the season for the New England Patriots? And do we see Mac Jones at all, period, for the New England Patriots moving forward?
Well, number one, the Patriots have been on the bye week since September 1st. So I don't know. I don't know if they're coming off the bye week or not. But you know, like, and it's going to sound like a joke, but it's the God's honest. I hope they just stick with Mac Jones, because at this point, I am actively rooting against the Patriots. I am reveling in their struggles. I want a top 2 draft pick this year to get his replacement. And kind of like you mentioned there with Jake Browning, I think, and we saw it last year when they turned to Zappy. Like, Zappy kind of stinks too. Like, he's not very good. But when you put in a new quarterback, whether it's Zappy or Will Grier, there's going to be a little bit of a spark potentially. And on top of that, teams aren't going to have film on those guys.
Yeah.
At least not recent film. So there's the likelihood that they could catch a team sleeping. So I need him to stick with Mac, embrace the suck, and just go get me Williams or May in the draft.
Oh, you're gonna have to really suck to get Williams. Like really, really suck.
We were 1 fourth quarter collapse this weekend away from being the number 2 overall pick. Like, we are that bad. We are that close.
Number 2 gets you Drake May. So I mean,
Yep.
hey, because I legitimately, well, first of all, the joke you made about keeping Mac Jones, that's the exact joke I made last episode, was like, hey, if you want a better pick, you just keep rolling with crappy old Mac Jones. But like, I'm curious of like why they have never given Malik Cunningham a look, because he's like dynamic. I think he's a guy that at least can get it down the ground regardless. Anyhow, but if you're not a top 2 pick in this draft, you're not getting a quarterback, because those top 2 teams, even if you don't need a quarterback, you're trading out of there to a team that needs quarterbacks. There's so many teams that need quarterbacks.
Yep.
And even if you're the 3 seed, you're going to have to trade up to get a Q, because somebody else will jump you. So if you want a Q, like, you got to hope the Pats just lose out moving forward, really.
Yeah. And this is a huge, like, this might be the game of the season this week. We're playing the Giants.
Yeah.
Like, we're looking at 2 teams here
that want the Q.
That really suck. Like, it would not shock me if at some point in the 4th quarter, like, both teams trot out their punter on like 2nd down.
Yeah.
We're giving them the ball.
Giving away. Yeah. We want the field position. I've seen so many mocks too of the Giants getting Drake May. So I mean, hey, if the Giants win, and they're helping the Pats by beating Washington this past week, which Danny Dimes DeVito there, whatever his name is, like, he got it done. He got it done. I don't know how, but he got it done.
This weekend, for a while there, I was living my football fantasy. Like, we had the Cardinals in the lead in the 4th. We had the Bears in the lead in the 4th. Like, these are all teams that the Pats are battling with for draft standings, and Cardinals, bad teams, stay bad. They blew the lead. Same with the Bears. So luckily, though, yeah, you're right. The Giants came through in a big way. So
Carolina didn't stand a chance. So you weren't getting the first pick.
Yeah, well, like, we just need Carolina to just like fall on not fall on their face, and just like maybe win a game here.
Hey, they got the Titans this week, so I mean, coin flip that one, really.
I'm trying to see here. What does the rest of their season look like?
You got the Titans, then they've got
the Bucks.
The Bucks, yeah, that one's not super promising.
Saints, don't love that one. Falcons.
There you go. Yeah, Falcons
we can beat the Falcons.
Dumb. Yeah, they'll do something dumb there. Falcons will win that one. Packers, well, they stink.
Yeah, we got the Packers. That's Christmas Eve.
Yeah, there's a Christmas miracle for you, Zach, right there.
Yeah.
And then
Jags, crazier things could happen.
Yeah, I'm going to put that one out because I think the Jags are going to go on a run.
And Bucks to finish on the 7th.
Well, Bucks maybe mail it in depending on if they're in a playoff spot or not.
Yeah, sure. So we're looking at like Titans here.
They got 2 more wins in them. They maybe win 2 more games.
God, I hope so.
Anyhow, we'll get back to the action here. So we welcome those 4 teams off the bye, but because of the Thanksgiving week, nobody on bye week this week. Lots of football. Like I said, we got the 3 Thursday, 1 Friday, full slate Sunday, and then obviously a Monday nighter as well too. So a big week of football. Nobody on bye weeks. It's gonna be a lot of fun, which means all of our fantasy lineups are good to go unless you had a catastrophic injury, which we've already previously discussed. So going into this week, our starts and sits of the week. Zach, this guy's been catching fire here, so I kind of like this pick here, especially against this Washington matchup.
Yeah, you bet. Brandon Cooks, Brandon with an I. He is somebody that, he's definitely more of that auxiliary piece that we've been talking about here, this week in that Dallas offense. Clearly behind Ceedee Lamb in the pecking order, but he has had a few bigger games this season with a top 14 finish, a top 16 finish, and a number 3 just 2 weeks ago against the Giants, where he had 9 receptions. So
he was the wide receiver 1 that week, wasn't he? Or the wide receiver 2, maybe?
Wide receiver 3.
Yeah, big week.
Yeah. So there is a possibility against a pretty to very poor passing defense in Washington that he could go off. So he is somebody that, like, you might even be able to get him off waivers right now in some leagues. And that's a player that you can get off waivers, and you can feel pretty good about plugging him into your starting lineup, I think.
Okay, mine's a gutsy one because you first of all got to pay a crap load of fab to get him. But then if you get him, I think he's a lot better than a lot of the tight ends that you have out there. Last year had a lot of relevance when Mark Andrews was out. We're looking at a team here that is drastically needing passing options. OBJ looking like he's going to be missing some time. Zay Flowers probably going to have a huge step up this week because of just necessity, but no Mark Andrews rest of the season. So at this point, when you can get a player that you're going to put in your active lineup off the waiver wires, especially a guy that will demand targets, like that just doesn't happen very often, especially this late in the season. So Isaiah likely going to step in on a team that uses the tight end a lot and a team that trusts him because when Mark Andrews was previously out, they peppered him with targets. And then now OBJ, that was emerging as this talent, looks like he's going to be out. I'm assuming this week, maybe more than 1 week with his injury. Even if he does play this week, I can't imagine how effective he is coming off the shoulder injury. Now, Isaiah Likely, it's like I'm looking at the matchup this week. The Chargers, terrible, terrible defense. Terrible. They're terrible against the pass. They're terrible against the run. And I mean, when you look at like what they give up to tight ends, it's kind of a crapshoot. It's hard to try and chase the analytics of it because of just how many teams don't use the tight end like other teams. But they give up an above average amount of fantasy points to the tight end position, especially a team like I mentioned that runs through the tight end because of obviously Mark Andrews. But looking at the Chargers, they give up an average of 8.2 fantasy points to the tight end, which like you're saying 8.2, okay, Jordan, like that's not much. But they've given up 3 touchdowns, which is significantly below average for most of the teams. Like you're looking at a lot of these teams are 5, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 6. And then you look at the yardage. It's the yardage that's substantially higher than other teams, 675 yards and 65 receptions. Now, a team that gives up a lot of receptions, a lot of targets, and a lot of yards to tight end. Now, that's what I want. I want Isaiah Likely to get lots of targets, lots of yardages. And then if he gets a touchdown on top of that, that's just a cherry on top. When you look at it, a tight end, if a tight end gets 9 points, they're a top 12, if not a top 8 tight end on the week. So this is a confident matchup against a team that's really struggling. They were very, very poor this past week against the Green Bay Packers. The Baltimore Ravens are substantially better than the Green Bay Packers. So I'd be firing up Isaiah Likely, a fresh, fancy new toy that if you're listening, you probably just got him off the waiver wire. Sits, and then that's pretty much it here. Zach, who is your sit of the week?
This ties in really nicely to your dud of the week because they're the same guy. I would be considering sitting Garrett Wilson against the Miami Dolphins. Over the last 3 games, the Dolphins are giving up the 9th least passing yards through the air. Regardless of what kind of coverage they have, looks like he'll have a pretty good cornerback across from him, unless they move him to the slot, which that might be one of their better bets there in New York, or with the Giants, or with the Jets, pardon me. There is the uncertainty though of Tim Boyle going in. Really, it's hard to imagine that an NFL caliber quarterback could be worse than Zach Wilson at this point. So maybe with the Tim Boyle experience, Wilson might be better than he has been, but to this point, Wilson's been, like you mentioned, a real disappointment considering the price you paid for him back in August.
Like, how you got to let Boyle go in there and just let her fly, like let her buck, air it out. I mean, I guess saying that the Jets are in a playoff spot right now, which is like insane to say. I don't know, maybe they're just on the outside.
They're not out of it.
Like yeah, they're not out. Yeah, they're outside looking in, I guess, but they're not out of contention right now.
Right. And it's a divisional matchup. Like these two teams, like there is that added element to where it's a divisional matchup, and like it does in some, like you said, in some crazy way, there are playoff implications.
Like, let him fling it, let him fly. But I just can't see that happen. Like, really, your best player is Breece Hall. Well, I guess maybe Garrett Wilson is your best player too, but give Breece Hall the ball, get him 20 touches, and then load the box up, and then you start airing it out. But yeah, in Tim Boyle we trust, I guess, if you're a Garrett Wilson owner, which doesn't sound great either. So my sit of the week is Tyler Boyd. And Tyler Boyd's been this nice little safety insurance blanket here. If you've had him, you're probably going to have the waiver wire, or he was like one of your very last picks. And he's been pretty consistent. He had a slow start, 2, 8, 6, 6, but then he had 13 bye week, 12, 7, 15. So he's just kind of that, guy you can throw in your lineup and you know what you're getting. And he gets a ton of targets in the red zone, which is kind of a weird conception for that offense, especially when you think of like big Ja'Marr Chase and what he's capable of doing, especially Joe Mixon turning it up a little bit. But it's just one of those ones where I just don't know how you have confidence starting Tyler Boyd in this matchup with a backup quarterback, especially during a week when there's no bye weeks. Everybody's available. Every single player is available. You're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in a divisional matchup in a game where you have a backup quarterback playing. I mean, like you said, stranger things have happened. Right now, they have him projected for 7.4 fantasy points. That's his projection. That's that's his lowest fantasy production in 5 weeks. Obviously, this Baltimore game excluded. But it just, how do you have confidence putting him in that game when you could go to the waiver wire and pick up like a Khalif Raymond and probably get more fantasy points from him in a matchup against Green Bay on a Thursday? Or you go pick up almost anybody off the waiver wire and have a higher ceiling than Tyler Boyd does this upcoming week. Like I said, this is one that could bite you in the butt because he just somehow just gets peppered with targets from a backup quarterback, finds the end zone, and in a divisional matchup where they need to win if they want to have any sort of playoff hopes. But just the odds are stacked up against him, especially against a very good defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I would just be avoiding that one at all costs. Anything, Zach, here you want to add on, throw in as we wrap up week 11 and begin week 12?
No, just everybody put it out there to the universe. I need a Giants win in a bad way.
I think you're preaching to the wrong group here. I don't think there's too many people that want to see the Patriots good again. That would happen for too many years.
Well, a guy can hope.
I'll hope with you, Zach. I'll give it to you. Thanks. That's gonna do it here for episode 105 of the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. On behalf of myself, Zach, and Armin, who is unable to be with us this week, thank you very much for listening. Good luck. Enjoy. This is a fun week of, like I said, there's a fun week of football. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. Probably just because my Lions always play on Thursday, but I'm super excited. Hope you guys are excited at home too. Enjoy some football, and good luck in week 12. Let's make that big old push for playoff spots here. It's getting to the nitty gritty. Anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. Take care. Let's talk soon.